Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. Welcome to The Ward, a weekly series catching you up on pretty much anything collegiate League of Legends related. My goal is to, of course, keep my ear to the ground of collegiate League of Legends and fill you in on the news and happenings. Each week, we're going to have a guest, and that's going to be specifically from collegiate League of Legends to come on and give us their insights and their perspective of the scene. And this week, my guest, as you can see on the screen, is Columbia College's head coach, Drake Porter. Hello, man. Welcome.
Thanks for me.
All right. So, you originally had practice, or scrims, but that's not happening. So I can actually go with the pleasantries here. I was going to cut right to it, but you doing all right, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. This week, like I had mentioned before, we had a lot of cancels and stuff like that. It's been a little annoying, but overall practice has been going well. The getting along well, I think. Good.
Cutting in a little bit in and out there. I think it's because of the mic sensitivity we talked about earlier. Might not just be picking up as much as it should be. But we can get right into the topics, though, so I won't be talking and you won't be hearing me anyway. So let's just go and get into it. The iterations of Columbia College. Went through a couple throughout the summer. One of them at DreamHack, you had a different jungler, a different bot lane. You didn't have Evan RL. Now you have Evan RL. How does the iteration of today's CC, the current roster where Bucksack is in jungle and you have Evan RL from RMU, how does that appeal to you more than the old iteration?
Well, really, I don't necessarily like roster swapping in the first place or role swapping in the first place. It's not like I go into a team and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have these guys totally play things that they don't actually play. Really, it's just we run into certain circumstances. We run into different things that we have to overcome, and we just evaluate our options. And unlike a lot of coaches, I don't rule out role swaps. And so we move Zach into the jungle. And I think the entire team is getting along really well. I think that we're improving really quickly. And really, the environment here is a lot different from how it was at RMU. I think, and pretty much in every single way. I mean, on an academic level, and a performance level, in terms of how everybody's getting along really well. I just think that it's all feeding in like very well, to be frankly honest. In particular, Evan and Zach, having already worked with me, they understand my approach to things. And kind of one of the weird small things that a lot of people don't really pay attention to is just like terminology. And so I use different words for different concepts than other coaches may use. And Evan and Zach are already used to that. And so they'll use the words that I use. And it just helps speed up the process of everybody getting used to each other. And so I like working with people I've already worked with before. And then on top of that, I brought some of my favorite players I've worked with here. And everything's going really well.
So, speaking of your favorite player, and you were also harping on, we'll talk about a little bit on RMU, how it's just a little bit different than CC as far as the atmosphere. One of the things you actually talked about with one of our old writers, Julian Alexander, who's moved on to better things right now, he interviewed you, and you talked about how RMU was a slightly negative atmosphere. When you guys lost, you guys you stuck in that mindset. You say it's better over at Columbia College now? Nope, I think you got your mic.
So what it was with RMU. So RMU and Columbia College are very similar in the sense that you have players who really, really want to win. It's just about how they express that desire to win that differs. At RMU, players really wanted to win, so whenever they didn't win, there was a really negative drawback to it. You had players who would kind of shut down after a loss, or you had players who would get highly emotional after a loss, things like that. At CC, in terms of Evan and Zach, they both worked through that full year of RMU and the emotions of RMU that I think they cope with loss a lot better. And then on top of that, we have players at RMU who understand the process of loss being a necessity for improvement. And I think that that's been something that's helped us a lot this year. And so realistically, we're very similar to RMU in the sense that there's a massive drive to win. We just express it in different ways.
And So since you're bringing on somebody from RMU, you don't think that's going to affect the atmosphere and kind of revert it back to the old one? I'm talking about specifically Evan RL, who I see you guys banter on Twitter. So I'm assuming you guys are in very good standings. And obviously, he's on your team, so I would assume he is. But you don't think there's going to be any reminiscent of that atmosphere going over to Columbia College?
No, I really don't. Evan's a lot different this year than he was last year. I pretty regularly talk about how, Shady, who's now on TSM Academy, is kind of like the perfect player on a mentality perspective that a coach would want to work with. And so I was talking to Evan about that one time, and he kind of joked about how I need to see season 8 Evan. And then I kind of realized that, wow, he's really accurate in that. And that his mentality's changed a lot going into this year. At RMU, Evan was more the player to kind of shut down more so than to kind of get loud and be emotional and be negative. And so it could be really difficult. And on top of that, we had specific interactions between Evan and some players that didn't really work well. They just didn't get along well. Those things don't really exist here at the moment, or at least everybody on our team we're pretty much best friends. To be frankly honest, they all get along super well, and so I don't believe that will be a thing. However, you also have to understand that the length of competition involved in Collegiate League of Legends, given the fact that it's pretty much a 6-month-long season, things can wear down and things can change. So we'll see later on this season, but for now, I think everything's going really well with them.
Well, you're starting out strong in in your division. Which I saw your first game. It was pretty easily won. That was no problem. There was a comment on stream though, and I'm going to spring this one on you because I know we went over some of the questions beforehand, but we got through them a little bit faster than I anticipated. So I'm going to spring a couple of them on you. There was a comment in the stream about you being to quote it, to paraphrase, I should say, a ruthless coach. Like, you don't take excuses. You find something, you pinpoint it, and you will grind on that until it's fixed. Do you feel like that maybe added to the negativity at Robert Morris University, or do you think it's actually something that helped? Then it was just an overall mindset at Robert Morris that you're not finding at Columbia College, that your coaching style actually works a little bit better with?
I'm actually happy that you touched on that. I think that's a really good question to ask in the first place. And so I don't. So I think that there's two sides to it. I think, first of all, a lot of people think I'm a lot more kind of strict and harsh. It's pretty loud outside. A lot of people are thinking that I'm a lot more strict and harsh than I actually am. But then on top of that, I think that a lot of people don't really understand kind of what I mean in terms of what I'm saying in the first place. And so I'm not actually that harsh of a coach. A lot of my players can attest to that. We are talking today, lots of jokes go around, stuff like that. The real difference whenever I'm talking about a lot of these things that people perceive as me saying that you need to be like a harsh boot camp military dude is that there has to be a very clear objective that is at the forefront of what you're doing every single day. And that has to be constantly stressed and emphasized. And then on top of that, there has to be real emotions connected to that. A lot of the teams and situations I talk about, teams, they don't want to lose, but they don't really, really want to win. And this year, all the players at CC just more than anything want to win. And so that's more along the lines of what I'm talking about whenever I seem like I'm coming off as some like hardcore boot camp military coach or something. Really, it's just that I find the issues and we really stick to them. We really focus on them. We don't let up. And so I think that a lot of times people think I'm a lot more harsh than I actually am. But then on top of that, I'm actually a lot. The situation, the entire environment of how I coach at RMU and how I coach at CC are two very different ones. I'm coaching these teams a lot different than people realize. And so at CC, it's actually a lot more lax than RMU, oddly enough. But that's largely because, we have a team that works really well together in the first place, and we don't really need to be as strict this year just because we have a very dominant roster, and I think our standings are going to prove that.
All right. And actually, speaking of your roster, I do want to touch on real quick. Hollywood was your mid laner last year, and remind me of who the new one is this year. I know you just got promoted there, correct?
Kind of approach a different strategy this year to recruitment that I think worked out really well for us. instead of going and trying to recruit all of our players in summer, we identified that most players would be trying for academy in the summer, and so you probably wouldn't be able to pick them up. And so we decided to wait for spring to recruit some of our extra players, and so we ended up picking up both Julian and Evan in the spring. And so Julian used to be priorly known as Zatzmod, was like a top 10 challenger mid, highly talented, one of the best players I've personally worked with in collegiate.
And that's the iteration that's actually going to be competing in the college law tournament. That's also is this the same iteration that's going to be at the Wichita Esports Convention as well?
Yes. And actually, we're playing our seeding matches tomorrow. I'm not sure if they're being streamed, but our first round match is versus Maryville, so that should be a really fun one.
Yeah, I was about to ask that because Maryville, I know Maryville is in there. You have actually two teams as far as, according to their website, you have two teams, the silver and the blue. And then there's other collegiate teams in there too, which I'll actually talk about later on our stream. But I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maryville is your biggest opposition, at least in your mind, correct?
Yeah, so we've kind of split it up into two things. We want to beat Maryville. Just obviously, it's a personal vendetta for me. But then on top of that, it's kind of a test for us in collegiate. If we can beat them, it just immediately shows that we might just go on to have a really good season in the Collegiate League of Legends season. So we're looking forward to that. But at the same time, there are a lot of really good teams that aren't in collegiate in this tournament. And where we've been scrimming against these teams, we've been doing really well. And so, at the beginning of the year is a little rough, but we really started to refine the edges. Our scrim results have been great versus these really high level teams. And so we're looking forward to trying to win the whole thing. But we've kind of split up the goal into two halves. And so we're kind of preparing for Maryville, and then we're preparing for everybody else. And they're kind of all chunked together. So we're putting a lot of time, effort, and thought into preparing and beating Maryville.
What are your thoughts about Maryville's support? West Coast Carey used to be the top laner, used to coach.
I believe that, well, first of all, I don't think that they're actually going to use him in the Wichita land, so we won't be able to get to see him for a while, especially in a competitive environment. So I believe in C-Law, kind of within playoffs, that's when we'll get to see how he performs. I do know that whenever he first was making his transition to Maryville, he did give some time on to support. I think that his performance on support's definitely worse than his performance at top, and I do think that he's a step down from Cadiers for sure. I think that we're pretty much going to approach preparing for them the same way regardless, and you'll kind of see that throughout the season, our approach to taking down Maryville and using the various tools that we have. And so I'd love to see how they perform with West, but I definitely do think it'll be a step down for them. It may not be a massive step. It may be a massive step. I guess we'll see, because really you can't tell a whole lot off of solo queue. The difference whenever you play in a competitive environment versus solo queue, especially whenever you have an AD carry like Prototype who knows what he wants and will say it, you get a little bit of a variance. So I guess we'll see whenever the season starts.
Fair enough. And well, the C-Law season actually has started. So you guys haven't played your second game yet, have you? I don't think your mic picked up what you just said there.
We're playing those on Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't seen who it is against, but your overall goal, of course, is to win the entire thing. Is there a personal goal you have going into this rather than just winning, and maybe even outside of beating Maryville, which I know you want to prove over in Wichita, but I know one instance is not always exactly what you want. I mean, Midwest Campus Clash last year was evidence of that when you actually did beat Maryville as the coach of RMU, but later on you guys fell and Maryville University became the at the time U-Law champions. Now it's college law. Are there any other goals that you have going into the new college law season?
Yeah, I think that, so I voiced this before, but I believe the greatest collegiate team that we've ever had, holistically, was actually University of Toronto. I think that Maryville was a team that performed very well on that day, was ready to play on stage on that day for the finals in the NA, C-Law or U-Law at the time system. But not even just setting aside the International Collegiate Cup where Toronto ended up performing well. I believe that Toronto had the most holistically good style of play, whereas I think that Maryville's very linear. And so my objective is to form really the greatest collegiate roster and kind of corresponding style of play that we've ever seen. And so what that means is I think we have to win at least versus Maryville and Wichita, ideally win Wichita. I believe that we have to beat them at Campus Clash, which there will be future information on that released fairly soon. But at Campus Clash, there will be another one. Campus Clash, and then on top of that, we have to beat them within any other lands that we run into them. North regional finals, and then on top of that, and then into the CLAW finals. And so just strong performance the whole year. But I want us to not look the same every single game. I want us in January, February to look different from us in May, June, because we're going to adapt as the patches changes. Whereas, the Maryville that we're going to see tomorrow in our matches against them are pretty much going to be the same Maryville that we saw 6-7 months ago. And that's not exactly what I want. So I want to build a well-rounded team that is dynamic and can adjust and change. And then on top of that, personally, I'd like to work on some of my personal brand situations and stuff like that. But really, yeah, the objective is to beat Maryville, of course, because I think they're going to be our greatest competition. But really, it's just to one-up Toronto and what I think they did a great job of last year.
All right. That's all the questions I have for you. Kind of allotted for 15 minutes here, going to 17. Do you have anything you want to close with?
Yeah, sure. I would love to, first of all, thank all my players who work with me every single day. We put in tons of effort. They work really hard. They give me focus, respect, attention. And I wouldn't be able to build the team that I think that we're going to build this year without their effort. So I have to, of course, thank them. I like to thank both of the other coaches, head coach Bam, and then on top of that, our assistant coach Matt, for their work. And then on top of that, Fam largely contributed in bringing me here in the first place. Have to thank our director, Brian Curtis, and then all the other people who work with our program as well. And then, of course, I'd like to thank you and CSL for having me on the show.
No problem. Thank you for being here, Drake. It's been great. Good luck. Good luck at Wichita. Good luck in CLAW, and hopefully I'll see you at Midwest Campus Clash. That'll be fun. But if not, good luck there too. All right, have a good one, man. All right. Now I'm going to transition over into a bigger face of Fekez. Once again, thank you, Drake, for joining us. Hope everyone enjoyed that. But we do have our portion where I go over topics of the week, and that was one of them was actually touched on a little bit in the interview with Drake. That would be West Coast Carry going to Maryville. So yeah, I mostly wanted to talk about how that's going to affect the bot lane. And Prototype, like Drake said, when he wants something or he knows he needs something, he says it. There's never been any refrain from somebody like Prototype, and it's something that's it should be respected. Obviously, he's a champion, so he wants a championship, he got it, and you can't really falter anything that he does in the collegiate scene because, again, it worked. So, wondering how that's going to work in the bot lane if West Coast Carry and Prototype can meld a little bit. Also, I do know Prototype did. I don't have the tweet on hand, but he did tweet a while back that West Coast Carry was playing Janna, and I don't know if that was a joke or how that was. I mean, there's obviously a lot of supports you can play nowadays. But there is one, I don't know if you can call it a meme, but there is a very long-running, I guess, at least personal jab at Papa Chow, his former support, the champion with the support that was with last year's championship team of Maryville. He played a lot of Janna. Obviously, he can play plenty of other champions too, but he played a lot of Janna. And I don't know if it's just a strategy they have at Maryville's bot lane or if it's just something that they're comfortable with or what. But there was a tweet by Prototype talking about how that West Coast Carry has been playing Janna. So I'll be anxious to see how that one's going to go throughout the season. We're going to go and move on to the Big Ten. The Big Ten was announced. It first was not announced. It was just the Peach Belt Conference, which we won't get into this week. We're going to get into the Big Ten because that is a recurrence from last year with a little bit of a different format. They have the East and the West broken up, just like normal Big Ten when you watch football. The first and second place of those will be advancing into the play-ins for the championship. And again, traditional breakdowns. The West is going to be comprised of. I have my notes here, so if I gleam over, that's why. Northwestern University, Purdue, University of Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, Wisconsin. That will be the West Conference. And then the East, going to be having a surprise here with Penn State, because they were actually not in it last year due to some school difficulties. I don't know if anyone remembers that, or if you're just now catching up. Last year, Penn State did not have a chance to be in the Big Ten Conference due to some issues. We actually have an article on cstarleague.com. You have to go back quite a bit to find it, but there is an article way back there about it. So Penn State's going to be in there, or at least as far as I know. They haven't said they haven't been, so as far as I'm concerned, they're in there, along with University of Michigan, Michigan State, my sweet loves, Ohio State University, Indiana University, University of Maryland, and Rutgers. So, yeah, the Big Ten, that's going to be happening again next week. I will more than likely talk about the Peach Belt Conference, which have schools that a lot of people don't know about on the more wider scale as they do the Big Ten. I mean, pretty much everyone, I would assume everyone's heard of Penn State, University of Michigan, pretty much any of them. So gonna get into that next week when I research the schools a little bit more. Moving on though, Wichita Esports Convention, we talked about that as well. I'm gonna go into a little bit more detail. It's going to be February 2nd through the 4th. It's going to be at Wichita. I hope that would be pretty obvious. It is a $20,000 prize pool up for grabs for the League of Legends branch of it. Now, there are other tournaments going on there. Street Fighter, CSGO, maybe in Overwatch. I don't remember. They have a whole website actually dedicated to it that I would encourage checking out. But you can also find that on their Twitter. I think it's Wichita Esports, their Twitter is. But regardless, $20,000 prize pool for League of Legends side of it, and there are going to be collegiate teams and non-collegiate teams. Like Drake was talking about, he is training for in Maryville, but there are other teams. Zenith Esports is going to be there as well, so there are a mixture of both. It is a tournament by the school, hosted at the school, but it's not just strictly a collegiate League of Legends tournament. But there are quite a few teams. Bellevue University, Columbia College, both their blue and silver versions. Grandview University, Maryville University, the champions right now. Colorado University, Boulder, and Robert Morris University. Robert Morris University I'm going to be very interested in seeing, because I actually don't know what their roster really is capable of right now. They have a completely different roster than last year. I believe they have like this, maybe one of the same coaches as last year. I actually do have it. Dan Morzet. I think it was the assistant coach last year. Other than that, everything has changed. They have Mini Bestia as the jungle. At least the last time I checked, that may have changed. This information I gathered was over the break, and even with Columbia College, things changed. Maryville University now have a new support. I have to update that as well. But last time I checked, Mini Bestia, who was familiar with the team, I don't remember if he played with the team. I think he was on the team. I think he was the jungle. No, Mordio was the jungle. He might have been the sub. Either way, Mini Bestia is still on that team, and Dan Morzet. Everyone else, as far as my knowledge goes, is completely different on Robert Morris University. So that's a school I would be really interested in checking out, because, again, don't know what they're capable of, and who knows, they might blow everyone away, or they might just do what everyone is kind of expecting in the collegiate scene and not do as well as they used to. But that's just how it goes sometimes. People graduate, people change, but now you're also seeing trades happen, and that's when it gets really exciting, because there's scholarships coming out now, which actually Team of the Week is going to be mostly based on scholarships. That's the next topic going in, because there's plenty of teams to keep an eye on, like Maryville University, obviously, Columbia College, Robert Morris University, Simon Fraser University as well. But I want to try to touch on one team a week that is not as familiarized with everybody, not as in the scene as everyone else. So this one is going to be Lords University. Some of you might have heard of them. They actually have their, again, if I glance down my notes, they have their first year esports program going on right now. The big thing about them that I'm actually glad I had Drake on for this, is one of the reasons why I chose this, is because their support is the former ADC for Columbia College, Artemis. And again, this information was gathered over the summer, so I would assume that is still the case until I've been told otherwise. But their support is the former ADC for Columbia College, Artemis. They also have the former ADC sub for Columbia College, Homecoming, on their team as well, and he is actually playing ADC for Lords, and again, Artemis as support. So the bot lane actually has Columbia College experience. Now, it wasn't under Drake. Drake was at Robert Morris University at the time. So things change. Pretty much almost the entire team of Columbia College is different as well. You still have Misty Stumpy in the top lane and Bucksack on the team. He's not playing ADC anymore. He's now in the jungle. So a little bit has changed, but there are still some familiarities within that team on Lords, over to Columbia College. They've also had live experience with DreamHack Montreal and the Tyler 1 Invitational Tournament. So they're not inexperienced. They have had practice. They've had live practice. They've had tournament practice as well. So, I mean, that is a lot of what teams miss sometimes coming into big tournaments, like the ULaw, things like that. And, of course, again, they have a scholarship program, so that's also a big incentive. And we're going to start seeing a lot of gaps between players whenever you get a school with a scholarship against a school with a non-scholarship. I think one of the last bastions of that is University of Michigan, who still has a very great grassroots team, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. But as the years go on, you're going to see a lot of difference, and we've actually seen that over last weekend with the first CSL varsity broadcast. It was Southwest Baptist. They absolutely destroyed their opponents who didn't have Southwest Baptist from Missouri. They actually have a scholarship program and absolutely destroyed. Because you can attract talent there. That's one of the reasons for scholarships, to attract talent there and get the best players you can. So Lords, I feel like Lords is one of the is my school of the week for the first week. Again, next week we'll do a different one, and we'll try to keep that up throughout the entire season because there's plenty to talk about as far as schools, scholarships, and people to watch out for. Week 1 standings, pretty much what you would expect as far as teams going in. Like I said, Southwest Baptist, they took out their opponents. I actually don't remember who they played, honestly. I even casted that game, which is sad, but that is in the North Conference. Let's see here. I actually had it here. Vanderbilt, Clemson, Texas Tech, Virginia Tech. Some of the ones you recognize from last year, they are all 1-0. Georgia Tech, they also took out their opponents. So there's a lot of 1-0s here, but most of them are going to be the ones you recognize. And this is from the Southern Conference as well. So the schools that have been big so far, they've so far shown up. Carnegie Mellon, they actually played 2 games already, along with University of Toronto, University of Toronto, they're an interesting one. This is for the East Conference, by the way. That's an interesting one because a lot of their team got called up to an academy team for the NALCS. So University of Toronto, they're somewhat on a soft reset. But so far, it hasn't really deterred them. They're still 2-0. Carnegie Mellon, like I said, 2-0 as well. York Esports have won their game, their first game. RIT, who again you might recognize from last year, also won their game. You can also go check this out on the Battlefy that Riot has set up for each conference. But I'm just lightly going over each one of the conferences, not hitting too many of them, but just gonna give a general overview. But again, we're going over to the West, where there's a lot of California teams. Boulder, who I believe is the Boulder that is going to be at Wichita, they are 2-0 right now, so they are sitting pretty with their 2-0 record. And let's not forget that this is actually a Swiss tournament, so they will be facing only 2-0 teams come their next game, which ups the competition level. They're not going to be taking on anybody who's lost any games so far. UCI, they're undefeated with their first game. University of British Columbia, they have won theirs as well. University of British Columbia is also going to be one that I'm curious on because, again, they don't have quite the same roster as they had last time. But that is the general overview of standings. About what you expect, nothing huge. No, it doesn't seem like there's any big upsets coming out in just week 1. But we do have games coming up this week for CSL that are going to be broadcasted. You can go check them out. That's this weekend on the 27th. We have, and this is going to be, these times are going to be in Pacific Standard Time is it our first Twitch? Yeah, it's our twitch.com/C Star League, just the first channel we have. We have 3 channels now. We have so many games, but just going to be the first channel. Waterloo versus New Hampshire. That's at the 27th. That's going to be at 12 o'clock. At 3 o'clock that same day, it's going to be Kentucky versus Murray State. And again, on Sunday, that's the 28th, that's the Royal Rumble for any wrestling fans. That is going to be Cincinnati versus Missouri, which I will be casting because I was actually born in Missouri, the Ozark Mountains, and moved to Cincinnati when I had my 16th birthday there and spent the next 9-10 years there. So I have actually a pretty big attachment to Cincinnati and Missouri. I'm very excited to cast them and to have them battle over for my appraisal because that's obviously what it's for. But moving on from that, we actually have some breaking news. While I was preparing for this, we had a breach of rules coming out from UOIT. I believe that's University of Ontario Institute of Technology. Jeremy Javage, excuse me if I say this wrong. Jeremy Javage saying he regardless he is actually banned for next week. He used a homophobic slur. I'm reading this straight from Riot's website, which you can go check out, Riot Tizza on Twitter if you want the link for the whole article. Used a homophobic slur and other demeaning languages toward an opposing college law season player while live on his personal stream. He also exposed Javage's stream exposed him using a racially insensitive term in his team's Discord, and is being issued a 1-game ban or suspension is the term for one instance of homophobic language directed at an opponent and one instance of displaying a racial slur on stream in violation of college law season code of conduct. So that is going to be affecting University of Ontario Institute of Technology, and he will be banned for week 2, and he'll be eligible to play again on week 3. That is it, though. 30-minute time slot. I went to 31 minutes. I think I timed this pretty well. I hope you all enjoyed. I actually don't have Twitch chat up. I hope you're not flaming me either. That would be great. But you can follow me on Twitter if you do want to flame me, at Pheques, P-H-E-Q-E-S. I encourage constructive criticism, or if you want to just ask me a personal, or not a personal question, but a question on anything collegiate that I might have missed here, because there's so much to cover. I'm not going to cover it all. If you want any links or anything, feel free to hit me up again. That is Pheques, at Pheques, P-H-E-Q-E-S. Other than that, thank you again for joining. We'll be back again same time next week at 5:30. Well, actually, it was 6 o'clock this time. Might be 6 o'clock next week. Probably. Stay tuned on Twitter. You can actually follow that on Twitter at CSLLOL and C Star League. Go check them out. We'll have the updates there. And again, y'all have the updates on my Twitter as well. So either way, see you again. Thank you for joining me.